Joshua was sitting in a leather armchair in his small office located in the corner of the car dealership. It was close to closing time, but he was in no hurry to get home. This car dealership was his brainchild, created from scratch. Every brick in the walls of this place, every car parked on its territory, all this was the embodiment of his work. But success did not come easily to him. Joshua remembered the day it all started. He was only 19 when he lost his father, who had owned a small garage in their town all his life. The son could have gone the same way, continued to repair cars as his father did. But Joshua wanted more. Inspired by childhood dreams and inheriting a small plot of land along with a garage, he decided to take a chance. His memories took him back to that winter night when he first saw Mallory. She was from another world, from a world that seemed unattainable to Joshua at the time. They met at a party where he went, yielding to the persuasions of his friend. Mallory, with her sparkling eyes and sharp mind, immediately caught his attention. She was in her second year of law school, radiating ambition and determination. "Are you building your business? It's so brave," she said at the time. She sounded genuinely interested. For the first time, Joshua felt that his dreams were important not only to himself. That evening they talked for hours on end, finding interest and understanding in each other. A few months later they became a couple, and a year later he proposed to her, choosing the most expensive ring he could afford. It was modest, but Mallory was happy. The first years after the birth of the twins, sons Lucas and Dylan, were a challenge. Joshua often worked himself to exhaustion, trying to balance business and family life. In the evenings he returned home to spend time with the boys, telling them stories about cars and showing them how to fix things. These were simple moments, but they filled his soul with warmth. Now, 25 years later, Joshua looked at his car dealership with a sense of accomplishment. He managed to turn a small piece of land into a thriving business that was respected in the city. People came to him not only for cars but also for advice. But despite his outward success, in recent years he increasingly felt that the life he had been building so hard was starting to change. Mallory spent more and more time at work, and their adult sons had long since gone about their business. It didn't bother him openly, but sometimes he found himself missing the days when their family was closer. Mallory now worked as a lawyer at a local law firm that dealt with family law and commercial disputes. After several years of hard work, she was noticed by the firm. Her professionalism and hard work allowed her to be promoted, and soon she became a junior partner. It was a huge step forward for Mallory, and she told Joshua more than once that she would never have achieved such success without his support. However, now he began to notice that with each step forward, their paths began to diverge. Her career consumed her life more and more. Mallory has always been ambitious, but over the past few years her work has become something of a chore. Therefore, when she was offered a position at a prestigious law firm that handled large corporate cases, her heart began to beat faster. This job was on a completely different level. High ceilings, glass walls, stunning views of the city from the upper floors, everything screamed status and success. Joshua was happy for her. In the first week of her new job, he even stopped by her office to present her with a bouquet of flowers, as he had in her early days at the old firm. Mallory smiled and thanked him, but he noticed that she looked a little tense, as if her thoughts were somewhere far away. Her new boss, Evan Kelly, was a well-known figure in legal circles. He was tall, with well-defined features and a manner that immediately attracted attention. He spoke confidently and with a slight note of charisma that could fascinate any interlocutor. Mallory couldn't help but admire his professionalism. Her colleagues whispered that he was not only a great lawyer, but also a man who lived at full speed. Expensive suits, high-end restaurants, trips to other cities on a private plane. Because of her new position, Mallory started working late. At first, it was the rare evenings when she came home an hour or two later than usual. "It's just a lot of work," she told Joshua, apologizing for being late. But gradually these evenings became the norm. She often returned with a subtle scent of someone else's perfume that did not belong to Joshua. Joshua was starting to notice minor changes. Mallory has always been rational in her spending, but now her wardrobe has started to change. She started buying expensive designer suits, shoes, and accessories. "This is important for my new position," she said, noticing his raised eyebrows. The real doubts arose a couple of months later, when she was late at home once again. An incoming call appeared on her phone while she was changing in the bedroom. Joshua noticed that the screen was showing the name Evan. She answered quickly, going into another room, and spoke softly, almost in a whisper. When she returned, she looked worried but answered his questions casually. "Working moments, nothing important." "Of their sons?" Lucas was the first to notice something strange in his mother's behavior. During one of the video calls, he asked why she looked so tired. "It's okay, honey, it's just that the new job takes a lot of energy," Mallory replied, turning her gaze away from the camera. But Lucas detected a note of nervousness in her voice that hadn't been there before. He decided not to insist, but this worry remained in his mind. When Dylan and Lucas came home for the weekend to see their parents, Joshua greeted them with joy, cooking their favorite dishes, but Mallory hardly spent time with them. She was constantly in her office, working or talking on the phone. One day Dylan heard her talking softly and, it seemed, excitedly to someone. When he tried to look in, she closed the door to her office and continued the conversation. "Dad, what's going on?" Dylan asked at dinner. "Mom disappears all the time." Joshua, trying not to show his emotions, answered evasively. "She's having a difficult time at work right now. You know, she always gives her best." But Dylan sensed that his father was hiding something from them too. Dylan was too attentive to details not to notice the tension between his parents. That evening, Lucas decided to talk to his mother directly. "Mom, are you avoiding us?" "What is it?" he asked as she was about to leave the house. Mallory stopped, but her face remained calm. "No, of course, what kind of nonsense is that? I just have a lot of things to do right now," she replied with a tight smile. "Listen, Mom, we're not kids. You can be honest with us." His voice sounded insistent, but without aggression. "If you have a problem, we can help." She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if she was looking for a way to evade an answer. "It's okay, Lucas. It's just a job." "You're making things too complicated," she said, avoiding further conversation. After that, Lucas and Dylan started spending more time with Joshua. They noticed how his father tried to hold on, but his fatigue and tension betrayed that he was worried more than he was saying. In a private conversation, Dylan once said, "Dad, I do not know what is going on, but if you need help, you can always count on us." Joshua just nodded, unable to find the words to describe his feelings. It was important for him to maintain the image of a strong family, but he saw that his sons had already begun to realize that their family was no longer what it used to be. Joshua understood that something was changing. The only question was what exactly. He continued to watch, not wanting to snap at the accusations, but this silence only increased his anxiety. One evening he decided to wait for her at the office. When she came out, he noticed Evan standing next to her, saying goodbye to her. His hand barely touched her shoulder, a quick gesture, but close enough to make Joshua doubt it. When she got into the car, her face looked tired, but her gaze shone with some inner fire that had not been lit in her eyes for a long time when she looked at him. This scene pierced Joshua, but he didn't say anything. He just started the engine and drove her home in silence. In the evening, there was intense silence in the house. They had just finished dinner, but instead of the usual conversations at the table, Mallory quickly cleared the plates and hurried to her office. Joshua was sitting in the living room, mechanically flipping through the pages of a newspaper that had long since lost his attention. He looked at his watch and tried to decide whether to talk to her now or postpone this conversation again. His inner tension was growing by the minute. Finally, he got up and walked slowly to the door of her office. He heard her muffled voice on the phone. Joshua stopped, listening. The conversation was short, but the words, "see you tomorrow," and the soft, almost playful tone in Mallory's voice struck him like lightning. When the door opened, he was standing in front of her. "Is there something you want to tell me?" His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Mallory flinched, her face darkened for a moment, but she quickly pulled herself together. "What are you talking about, Joshua?" She tried to sound innocent, but her eyes avoided his. He was silent, letting the pause do its job. He could feel her nerves starting to give out. "You're staying late more and more often. You lock yourself in with your phone, and now there's this call. Who was it?" His voice was steady, but she could tell he was serious. "It's just a work call, nothing more," she shrugged, trying to look nonchalant. "A work call? What is it?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "You've been working too hard lately, Mallory. Even for your new position." She tensed, but still tried to hold on. "Joshua, you know how it is. A new job, a new level of responsibility. You always understood. Why are you hesitating now?" His eyes narrowed and he took a step closer. "Because you're lying," he said slowly. "I know you too well not to notice." She opened her mouth to say something but changed her mind. There was silence in the room, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. "Who is he, Mallory?" His question sounded urgent. Her face paled. She took a step back, leaning against the table. The pause lasted forever and finally she exhaled. "Evan." His heart stopped for a moment. Although he had already guessed it, it was unbearable to hear it out loud. Evan, your boss? He clarified, although he already knew the answer. She nodded, avoiding his gaze. How long has this been going on? His voice became sharper. A few months, she replied softly, her hands shaking. He felt a wave of anger rising inside him, but he held back. A few months. And you've been looking into my eyes all this time, living in this house, telling me that everything is fine with us? Mallory finally looked at him, her face a mixture of guilt and stubbornness. I didn't want you to find out that way, Joshua, but I've changed. We've changed. He smiled bitterly. You're the one who's changed, Mallory. You're the one who betrayed our marriage. She turned away as if his words had hurt her. You don't understand anything, she began, her voice trembling. I tried to live this life to be a good wife. But you're stuck. You're not developing, Joshua. And I grown up. He took a step toward her. So what? Have you decided that I am no longer worthy of you? She whirled on him. It's not that easy. Do you think it was easy for me to hide all this? Why hide it? He interrupted, his voice was firm, almost cold. If you wanted to leave, why didn't you? She took a deep breath and said the last thing he expected to hear. Because I don't want to destroy our family. His eyes widened in surprise. You don't want to destroy it? You've already done that. Joshua, listen, she raised her hands as if trying to calm him down. We may have an agreement. An agreement? He repeated her words in disbelief. She nodded, trying to look confident. We can continue to live together as a family. For the sake of the children, for the sake of our status. But I want to be with Evan. His face became motionless. Do you want me to accept that you'll be with him while we're still married? Yes, she said, forcing the word out. It's better for everyone. He looked at her as if he had never seen her before. Do you really believe that I will agree to this? You don't have a choice, Joshua. Her voice turned colder. Evan has already prepared everything. If you don't agree, we'll file for divorce and you'll lose everything. Home, business. You won't even be able to live a normal life. He froze, staring at her in complete silence. Finally he said softly, do you think that money and a house are all that keeps me going? Do you think you can blackmail me? Are you crazy? She didn't answer, just turned away, her shoulders shaking. She stood up, looking at him with disdain, but didn't say a word. When she left, he sank into a chair, clenching his hands into fists, and for the first time in a long time he felt his heart break. The next day started like any other. Joshua was in his usual spot at the dealership. The smell of engine oil lingered in the air, mixed with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, which he bought from a local vendor across the street. He concentrated on the paperwork, checking the list of cars that were scheduled to go on sale next month. The doorbell rang and he automatically looked up. A man in an expensive suit entered the office, perfectly fitting his toned figure. Joshua recognized him immediately. It was Evan Kelly, the man who had ruined his marriage. Evan confidently stepped inside as if he owned the place. His cold eyes swept over the office environment with a slight expression of disdain that he didn't even try to hide. Joshua, he began with a fake smile, we need to talk. Joshua put down his pen, folded his hands on the table and looked at him. If you came to buy a car, we have catalogs. If it's something else, then speak up. Evan took a step forward and sat across from her without waiting for an invitation. I came to discuss the situation with Mallory, he said, his voice soft but threatening. The situation? Joshua asked, tilting his head. Evan sighed as if tired of explaining the obvious. Let's be honest. You understand that she chose me. You know that, right? Joshua didn't answer, but his gaze grew heavier. I'm not here to quarrel, Evan continued, resting his elbows on the table. I just want us to come to a civilized solution. Civilized? Joshua said coldly. Is that what you call the destruction of a family? Evan rolled his eyes as if Joshua was a child who didn't understand adult things. Look, he began, leaning forward, Mallory deserves more than you can give her. She is an intelligent, ambitious woman. You're just a small-town guy. It is okay. You did everything you could, but now she wants something else. Joshua was silent, watching Evan's every move. Here's what I'm suggesting, Evan continued, pulling several sheets out of the folder. The divorce papers are here. Mallory has already signed them. If you sign too, we can settle everything quickly and quietly. You can even keep part of your business. Evan smiled as if he was making a generous offer. And if I refuse? Joshua asked softly. Evan chuckled. Joshua, let's not be under any illusions. I have the best lawyers. If you try to resist, I will ruin you. You'll lose everything, your home, your business, your reputation. For a moment, silence filled the room. Joshua sat motionless as if digesting what he had heard. Then he slowly stood up. "Do you really think you can just come here and threaten me?" His voice was low, calm, but there was a threat in it. Evan stood up, his self-confidence unshakable. "I'm not threatening Joshua. I'm just stating the facts. Mallory doesn't want a feud. She wants you to just accept reality." Joshua went to the door and locked it. The sound made Evan frown. "What are you doing?" "What is it?" he asked, his voice becoming less confident. "I just want us to talk without interruptions," Joshua replied, turning to him. He slowly walked closer, and a steely determination appeared in his eyes. "Evan, you have no idea who you're messing with. Do you think that your $1,000 suit makes you stronger? Do you think you can buy yourself respect?" Evan took a step back, but Joshua was faster. Before Evan could say anything, Joshua punched him right in the face, sending Evan flying backwards, hitting the wall. "Do you think you can come into my office, into my life, and threaten me?" Joshua's voice was full of rage. Evan raised his hand to his nose, which was bleeding. You're crazy," he stammered. But Joshua didn't stop. He grabbed Evan by the collar and pulled him towards him. "Do you want to talk about reality? Here she is. You're just a pathetic person who hides behind other people's words and other people's money." He threw Evan aside like a doll. He fell to the floor, breathing heavily. "If I see you near my house or my family again," Joshua said, leaning over him, "I'll make you wish you'd never been born." Evan staggered to his feet, his face covered in blood. You're going to regret this," he shouted, heading for the door. "I'm sure you'll be the one to regret it," Joshua replied coldly, opening the lock. Evan ran out of the office, leaving wet footprints in his wake. Joshua slowly sat down at the table, trying to calm his breathing. His fist hurt, but it was a small price to pay for maintaining his dignity. Mallory sat in her car parked by the road, clutching the steering wheel. Her eyes darted across the phone screen, where silence hung for an hour, not a single reply to her messages. She had already sent a dozen messages to Evan, each one sounding increasingly panicked. But there was no answer. Her head was buzzing with thoughts from the consequences of the events that had unfolded in recent days. After Joshua kicked her out of the house, leaving her alone with her choice, she turned to Evan for help. She was sure that he would support her. Wasn't he the one who said she deserved more? Wasn't he the one who convinced her that they would create a new, better life together? But instead of the promised support, she was faced with cold indifference. Unable to reach Evan, she tried to call her sons. Dylan answered first. "Mom, what happened?" "This is the third time you've called me this day," he sounded tired. "Dylan, I need to talk to you," her voice was shaking. "About what?" he asked, though his tone sounded irritated. "It's important. You have to understand. I'm going through a difficult period right now. I need support," she began, trying not to cry. But Dylan interrupted her. "Mom, I know everything. Dad told me." Her heart sank. "Did he tell you?" "What exactly?" "That's it. About you and this one, Evan. And to be honest, I do not know how you can call me now and ask for support." "Dylan, it's not that simple. You don't understand what I've been through," she tried to explain. "No, Mom, you don't understand. Dad was an example to us. You destroyed everything we thought of as family. And now you want us to help you?" His voice sounded as cold as an icy shower. "I can't." Dylan hung up the phone, leaving her in complete silence. She tried to call Lucas, but his response was even more violent. "Mom, I respect you for what you've done in life," he began. "But I can't be on your side right now. You betrayed your father, and I don't want to be a part of it." Mallory put her phone down on the seat and covered her face with her hands. Her own children had turned their backs on her. It was the worst punishment she could have imagined. Mallory sat in a cheap cafeteria, inhaling the aroma of brewed coffee, which seemed too strong to be pleasant. She was holding her phone in her hands, checking for messages that weren't there. Suddenly the screen lit up. Evan was on the phone. She answered hurriedly, as if it could be any kind of salvation. "Evan, finally you called." Her voice was trembling with relief. A heavy sigh could be heard from the other side of the line. "Mallory, I think we need to talk." "Yes, of course. Where are you?" "I'll come right now," she replied quickly, getting up from her seat. "I'm in the hospital," he said softly. Her heart skipped a beat. "In the hospital? What happened?" "This is Joshua," he said, sounding like he couldn't believe what was happening. "This psycho attacked me." 20 minutes later, Mallory entered a small room where Evan was sitting on a bed with a bandaged nose and his right arm in a cast. His face was swollen, with purple bruises on his cheekbone and cheek. He looked unhappy and tired. "Evan," she exclaimed, running up to him. "Are you okay?" He looked at her with annoyance, which he did not try to hide. "What do you think? I'm in the hospital with a broken arm and a bloody nose. Of course I'm not okay. What happened? What did he do?" Her voice was full of panic. Evan took a deep breath, his gaze clouded with memories. "I went to talk to him. I wanted to settle everything, sign the divorce papers, and explain. You know, it's civilized. And he just freaked out." "Are you mad?" "What is it?" she asked. "Yes." Evan flared up. "This crazy guy attacked me like some kind of savage. I punched him in the face, threw him against the wall. Damn, he even stepped on my hand. I thought he was going to kill me." "Oh my God," Mallory whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed. Evan leaned forward, his face contorted with pain as he tried to adjust the bandages. "Do you understand that I can't contact him? This guy is not just some farmer like I thought. He's dangerous. But he can't just get away with it." She blurted out. "Do you think I haven't tried?" Evan interrupted. "But do you know what he told me?" "What? What is it?" she asked, clenching her fingers in excitement. Evan lowered his voice as if he was afraid that Joshua could hear even through the walls. "He said that if I file a complaint against him or appear in his life at least once more, he would make sure that I regretted it. And you know what? I believe him." Mallory opened her mouth to protest, but he abruptly raised his hand, interrupting her. "Look, Mallory, I'm not going to cross his path anymore. This guy won't stop. I saw it in his eyes. He's ready to go all the way, but I'm not." "But," she paused, confused. "No, Mallory." His voice got louder, even though it was clearly hurting him. "I have no desire to die because of your mistakes. Did you say that he's gentle and calm? You made a mistake. This is not a man to underestimate. So you're just going to give up?" Her voice was full of desperation. Evan smiled bitterly. "No, I accept reality. And you should do the same. Joshua is not someone you can fight." She turned away, her eyes glistening with tears. "So you're leaving me? After all we've done?" Evan sighed and looked away. "This is more than I can handle, Mallory. I'm not a hero and I'm not going to die because of your drama." Mallory stood up, her face contorted with a mixture of pain and anger. She looked at Evan, who looked broken, and without saying another word, she headed out of the room. Her hands were shaking, and her heart was pounding like it was going to jump out of her chest. She turned around and looked at Evan again. He was sitting on the bed, trying to pretend that he was okay, but his scared and annoyed face gave everything away. "You said I deserved another life," she said, her voice trembling, but there was already a note of reproach in it. "You said I deserved better. That you'd give it to me. You promised, Evan?" He looked up at her, sighing heavily as if this was the last conversation he wanted to have. "Yes, I did," he admitted, his voice dry. "But I didn't know it would go this far." "You didn't know?" Her voice grew louder, almost rising to a scream. "You persuaded me to leave my family, leave my husband, destroy everything that I had been building for years. And now you're just leaving?" Evan turned away, looking out the window. "You made your choice, Mallory," he said coldly. "I didn't force you." Her breathing became heavy and tears glistened in her eyes, but she continued. "You said I could count on you. That we'll be together. You swore that I would never feel lonely again. And now you're sitting here talking about how scared you are and just giving up?" He turned abruptly to her, his face tense. "You don't understand who you're messing with. Joshua is not just your old husband. This man is dangerous. He won't leave us alone." She took a step forward, her voice trembling with desperation. "I've ruined my life for you, Evan. For us. And now you're saying it's over?" Evan was silent for a moment, looking at her as if he was trying to find the right words. But instead he just lowered his head wearily. "Yes, Mallory. It's over," he snapped, getting up from the bed despite the obvious pain. "I'm not going to put my life on the line for your decisions." Her face was contorted with rage and pain. "Solutions? Did you call these solutions? It was you who convinced me that our bond mattered." "You're just a coward, Evan," she finally said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "You've been pretending all this time that you're stronger than you really are. And now that it's come to real life, you've shown your true colors." Evan didn't answer. He just turned away, letting her know that the conversation was over. Mallory stared at him for a few more seconds, then turned around and left the room, slamming the door loudly. She walked down the hallway, barely able to see the road in front of her. Her hands were shaking and her face was flushed with rage. But with that came another feeling, a feeling of emptiness. Everything she risked for turned out to be an illusion. And now she was alone. A cold wind greeted her on the street, as if the world itself had turned away from her. Evan soon fired her under the pretext of downsizing, and without the support of her family, Mallory was on edge. All of her credit cards were blocked after Joshua transferred the joint accounts to his name. She realized that she could no longer rely on anyone but herself. But how can you get your life back if it's gone? That night, she sat alone in a cheap hotel, clutching her phone, but she didn't call anyone else. Her world had completely collapsed. The early morning brought the cold autumn air to Joshua's house. He stood on the porch with a cup of coffee in his hands, watching the golden leaves swirl in the air under the gusts of wind. His gaze wandered into the distance, but his thoughts remained fixed, focused on one thing: the completion of a chapter that he thought would last his entire life. The divorce papers were on the table in the living room. They were printed on thick paper, and the text on them looked so formal and cold, as if there was nothing personal behind these words. But Joshua knew that every line was the result of 25 years of life, which was now a thing of the past. He was in no hurry to sign them. Instead, he returned to the house, put the cup on the table and sat in the armchair that always stood by the window. It was his place of reflection. Here he thought about how to develop a business, here he made plans for the future, here he experienced his small victories and big disappointments. But today this place was for something else: to realize that his life had become his own again. The divorce process wasn't easy, but Joshua had his way. His lawyer, an old family friend, did not allow Mallory to claim the car dealership's assets. Joshua knew that if he lost the business, he would lose what was left of his old life. It wasn't just a business or a source of income, it was his work, his pride, his meaning. Mallory tried to fight. Her lawyers filed petitions, demanded the division of property and threatened legal proceedings, but Joshua did not give up. He didn't lose his composure for a second. Every time he came to court or to a meeting with lawyers, he kept himself straight, spoke clearly and did not allow emotions to get the better of him. When the court ruled that the car dealership remained with him, and Mallory would receive neither a share in the business nor alimony, Joshua felt both relief and bitterness. It was a victory, but it came at a high price. In the evening of the same day, he was sitting in his armchair again, holding a photo of their family in his hands. The picture showed him with Mallory and the boys, Lucas and Dylan, on the shore of the lake. They were smiling, and in Joshua's eyes you could see that sincere joy that comes from feeling harmony. Now that harmony has been destroyed. But what depressed him most was not the betrayal, but how easily she tried to justify her behavior. Her words about him being stuck, that she needed someone of her level, still rang in his head. But Joshua knew that it was infinitely dangerous to delve into these thoughts. He stared at the photo for a few more minutes and then got up, took out an old album from a drawer and put the picture inside. The past should have stayed in the past. He won't let him run his life anymore. Lucas came to see him in the afternoon. The son was reserved but caring as always. "Dad, how are you?" "What is it?" he asked, sitting down opposite her. "I'm fine, Lucas," Joshua replied, putting the papers back in his desk drawer. "I'm glad you didn't let her destroy everything you built," Lucas said, his voice full of pride. Joshua looked at his son and nodded. "Thank you for being with Dylan. Means a lot to me." "We'll always be there for you, Dad," Lucas replied confidently. After his son's departure, Joshua felt better. He realized that despite everything, he still had a family that supported him. This was his real wealth. When all the cases were completed and the divorce papers were signed, Joshua finally felt the weight begin to lift from his shoulders. For the first time in a long time, he was free. Not only from his marriage but also from the illusions he had about his life. He was ready to move on step by step, building a new chapter of his story. As evening fell, he went out onto the porch again, breathing in the cool autumn air. The first stars were coming out in the sky. At that moment he realized that life wasn't over. She just became different. And now everything that was ahead depended only on him. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.